Hello and welcome to Global Peace Studies for Sustainable Development in Africa, where we discuss pertinent issues of peace and sustainable development around the world and across Africa. I'm George Mutalemwa, moderating this session on behalf of the Africa Peace and Development Network, MAMA. Our theme today is Rethinking Conflict Resolution in the Great Lakes region, a decolonial approach to the Eastern DRC crisis. The speaker is Dr. Patrick Murhula, who is senior lecturer in the Department of Criminology at the University of Free State in South Africa. Thank you, Patrick, for accepting our invitation. You may now start actually sharing your screen, and I would like to welcome everyone. And please join me in welcoming Dr. Patrick Murhula.
Thank you, George. Thank you so much.
A pleasure.
Let me start sharing my screen.
Lovely.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, George, for your invitation. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Patrick, Dr. Murhula. I'm based in South Africa at the University of the Free State. And today I'll be presenting regarding the conflicts that are in the DRC, but my focus will be more on the eastern part of the DRC. And my topic is about rethinking conflict resolution in the Great Lakes regions. And we look at a decolonial approach to the Eastern DRC conflict. So, as we all know, since 1996, the Eastern DRC has been at the center of violent conflicts. And these conflicts are most of them rooted into the historical legacies of colonialism. So the effect of colonization have significantly contributed to the ongoing socioeconomic challenges and also creating this kind of instability that resulted in what is widely recognized now as one of the most severe humanitarian crises in the world. So my topic today, so the first focus or the first point that I look at, it will be on the overview first of the conflict. And secondly, we will look at the different causes behind the ongoing crisis in the Eastern DRC. And by having that kind of idea, the causes of those conflicts, we will be able to come with a decolonial approach that can be applied in the issue of the crisis in the DRC. So, as I said in my introduction, we do have what we have the legacy of colonization, and we can't separate the conflict that we are having currently in the DRC with its own history of the decolonization. So the DRC has a history characterized by the extensive violence exploitation, and that has been caused by devastating impacts of slavery and colonization. And here we can go back to the King Leopold II when he took Congo as his own property. And also we have the history that comes as well from the colonial administration of Belgium, that was a country that colonized the DRC. So during this dark period, we know the DRC witnessed unlawful atrocities, people have been killed, people, mutilations, and as well as the looting of its natural resources. And the worst thing that happened there, it was the kind of the colonial administration that has been employed. It was to divide the communities there and to conquer. And that kind of division still having the impact or the negative impact on the conflict that we are having in the eastern part of the DRC. So this is just a picture of what happened during colonization, and before that, when King Leopold II was in charge of the Congo. As you can see, the first picture, some people whose arms has been cut. And also you can see how the exploitation that was taking place during that area. And this, as I said earlier, does have an impact of the conflict that we are having currently in the DRC. So we can't talk about the crisis in the DRC without having a look at what happened in 1994 in Rwanda, because that's also an event that really triggered the conflict that we are having currently in the eastern part of the DRC. So the current situation in the DRC was caused by the genocide against the Tutsi minority that took place in 1994 in Rwanda. And during that atrocity, more than 800 people have been killed. And as we know, is part of the history, these atrocities were carried out by Hutu extremists who specifically targeted Tutsi as well as moderate Hutus. And a Tutsi-led rebellion ended this kind of violence 100 days after the massacre started in 1994. And after that, we had the control of Rwanda by the Tutsi-led rebellion forced millions of Rwandans, including the Hutu extremists and security forces responsible for the genocide. And all these people here went into the eastern DRC. As you can see, this is a picture showing how refugees from Rwanda enter the eastern part of the DRC. And among these refugees here were those Hutu extremists who committed genocide in Rwanda. So after 2 years later, after the genocide in Rwanda, in 1996, we saw the new Tutsi-led government in Rwanda formed a coalition with the armies of Uganda and Burundi, as well as various Congolese armed groups to invade the DRC. So basically, the Rwanda government justify its military action by asserting that Hutu extremists in the DRC continued to pose a threat to the Tutsi population. So that was one of the justifications from the Rwanda government, but also from the Congolese armed group we had that was led by the late Laurent Désiré Kabila, claimed that they were coming or to fight in the DRC because they want to end the dictatorship of the late President Mobutu. So the invasion of the DRC, led to major chaos. As I said, that was like the trigger of the issues that we are having. So after that, 1996, we had as well two significant conflicts known as the First and the Second Congo War. So that took place from the 1996 to 2002. And this war, especially the second one, involved a lot of countries in Africa. And some authors call it as the African World War, because We saw countries such as Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, the DRC, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Angola. So all those armies, forces came and fought inside the DRC. That's why here this I said it didn't really resolve the issues as the Rwandan government stated that they were to go there and eradicate the Hutu militias who were causing threats to the Tutsi population in the eastern DRC as well as in Rwanda, and also as the rebellion led by Laurent Desire Kabila that was planned to take out Mobutu, but again, these kind of wars didn't resolve the issues that the DRC population is facing. So this war created ongoing violence, especially in the eastern DRC. So to understand the source of conflict, so I use different paradigms that will help us to understand the conflict in the DRC. And as I said earlier on, by having the knowledge about the sources, we can come with different strategies that can help us to resolve the issue that we are having currently in the Eastern DRC. So I'm gonna have a look at two significant frameworks to provide a deep understanding of the causes behind the ongoing crisis in the Eastern DRC. So the first paradigm, I'm gonna look at what it called the intractable conflict paradigm that has been developed by John Barton. And here, this paradigm look at the criminal human needs, critical human needs, especially that all of us, each of us do have. And one of the needs is, the first one is the personal development. The second one is the security. The third one is recognition. And the last one is identity. So again, here I'll go through this kind of needs and I'll try to link it with the sources of conflict in the Eastern DRC. And after that, I'm gonna have also a look at the conflict minerals paradigm. And under this paradigm, I'm gonna have a look at the resource cost theory, the neo-colonialism theory, and also the most important, the global supply chain uh, theory. So when it goes to the intractable conflict paradigm, as I said earlier on, so we do have what we call the critical human needs. And one of those needs, the first one is the personal development. The second one is security. The third one is recognition. And the last one is identity. So let's look at how personal development is a link with what is happening now in the DRC. So personal development, as we have here, many challenges arising from a lack of personal development opportunities. And here one of them is poverty. And also we do have the limited access to quality education and healthcare services. And these kind of challenges, we have them in the DRC and especially the eastern part of DRC, a very big percentage of poverty, as well as a lack of quality education and healthcare services. So in this environment here, because we do have that high level of poverty, we do have people who are coming from outside, even from inside, to try to manipulate young people to join armed group because they tell those people, those young people, that if you join our armed group, maybe you're gonna have something that's gonna help you to help your family. So again, the lack of this kind of personal development does have a negative impact on the conflict that we are having currently in the Eastern DRC. So the second one is about the lack of security. So again, based on this paradigm, the ongoing violence and stability in the Eastern DRC make it extremely difficult for people to feel safe in their daily lives. So, in response to the increasing insecurity, we do have different armed groups that came out, and each of that armed group, try to say that maybe they want to fight because they want to protect their respective communities. And here an example is what one of the examples is what happened in Ituri, for example, between the conflict between the Hema and Lendus, because you can see each group want to protect, its own community as well as to protect, their lands, and also, to try to feel safe, because here again, the Congolese government failed to give security to all the population in the DRC. So security as well does have a link with the conflict that we are having currently in the eastern part of the DRC. And also the most important is about recognition and identity. And again, based on this paradigm here, I'll just go straight and give the example of the Tutsi ethnic group in the DRC. So, as we know, and this is a fact, the Tutsi ethnic group has played a crucial role in the president's conflict in the Eastern DRC. And the reason of that is because they've been persecuted and discriminated. So many members of this group have been denied their Congolese identity, which has pushed them to become involved in various rebel groups and armed conflict. And if you can see the history of all those conflicts in the DRC, we do have the RCD-ML, RCD Goma, CNDP, and even if the AFDEL, when they started, you will see that the Tutsi ethnic group was part of those armed groups, and also one of their demand was that they must be recognized as 100% Congolese. So it was like that kind of identity has been taken away from them. That's why they said, no, we have also to make sure that we must be accepted as Congolese people. And that also the issue of recognition and identity also is one of the sources that create conflict in the Eastern DRC. So, talking about now the second paradigm, and here I want us to look, or I want to share with you about the conflict mineral paradigm. And as I said earlier on, we will look at the resource cost theory, we look at the neocolonialism, as well as the global supply chain as sources of conflict in the DRC. Again, when it comes to the conflict mineral paradigm, especially focusing on the resource cost theory, we look again at the history of the Congo itself. Again, as I said in my introduction about Leopold II, as well as the Belgium country, they all use the mineral in the DRC, but they failed to develop the country itself. And again, under the Congo Free State, under the leadership of Leopold II, more than 10 million lives, have been cut off because of that brutality that Leopold II was using to take out the resource in the DRC. So beside that, also we, as I said earlier on, it was about the Belgium government that also start taking the mineral in the DRC. Again, they didn't even care about the development of the country or its own population. And most of the time as well, they were doing it by violating the human rights of the people in the DRC. And again, it didn't end after this, because when the Congo itself became independent, we had also the Cold War that came in. And again, the United States of America and the Soviet Union, they came also in the Congo and start dealing their issues there. And at the end of the day, it created a chaos environment. And from, if you can see these pictures here, especially the middle one, Congo itself, it was divided already, in the 1960s. That was after the independence of Congo. So this chaotic environment, along with Congo's wealth, set the stage for continued armed conflict, especially in the eastern DRC. So this also shows how the resource curse theory can also justify the conflict in the DRC. So we look at the idea of Paul Collier, that was the first to explicitly link the resilience on natural resources to the onset of armed conflict. And it theorized that people engage in conflict for material gain. So people don't go into conflict because just for fun, because they want to gain something. And when it comes to wars, civil war is caused by greed, but is most likely to occur in environments where an economic base can sustain it. So basically, this gives us a big picture while only in the DRC, why on the eastern part of the DRC we do have this kind of conflict. Why not at the north? But it's always in the eastern part, because that region is always rich in mineral resources. So basically, people are going there because they want to take the resources. Again, at the end of the day, they don't really care about the human right of the population who is living there. So quickly, we're gonna have also. I'll try to explain how neocolonialism as well does have an impact in the conflict in the Eastern DRC. So first of all, we have to understand that neocolonialism refers to the complex ways that Western countries still maintain control over other parts of the world, especially in economic, political, and cultural aspects. And here, neocolonialism is characterized by various forms of influence and control, such as economic exploitation through multinational corporations, also which often extract resources while providing minimal benefits to the local communities. So again, you can link it again with what was happening during colonization in the DRC. And here, this is very important to see how neocolonialism does have a very big impact in the conflict, the current conflict in the Eastern DRC, by using different armed group. It may be they are using the government armed groups or the rebel armed group, but again, for them, they just want to take the resources and take it. There is a cheap labor, also using cheap labor from different population that are in the eastern part of the DRC, and they don't also care about the development of the region. So here, what we have to understand is that in the DRC currently, neocolonialism is evident through the influence of the Western countries, particularly in their support and control over the illegal extraction and trafficking of mineral in the eastern region of the DRC. So this kind of illicit activity is often facilitated by armed groups, while some countries in the Great Lake regions act as satellite states to this imperialist power. So they are using armed groups. Also, they are using some countries in the regions to do the exploitation of the mineral in the eastern part of the DRC. And the satellite states provide logistical support, back armed groups, and sometimes also they are directly, participating in illegal trade. And the neo-colonialism approach does also have a link with what we call the global supply chain. And again, here I will use the global supply chain theory and how I will link it in the conflict in the Eastern DRC. So the global supply chain theory focuses on how organizations, often multinational corporations, manage the flow of goods and services across international borders to, according to them, to maximize efficiency, to minimize costs, and also to increase competitiveness. And when it comes to the DRC here, in the context of the ongoing conflict in the DRC, and this is a study that has been conducted by Mogatini, someone who wrote a lot about the conflict in the DRC. And according to him, armed forces operating the Eastern DRC are engaged in illegal extractions of minerals from occupied Congolese territories, and they then smuggle them into the neighboring countries. And according to him, this activity is part of the supply chains that are controlled by transnational corporations and supported by the European Union. That's why I said we link it with the neo-colonialism. And this is resulting in the export of these valuable resources to Western nations. And based on his study, he proved that the support of European Union is based on how the EU entered into a memorandum of understanding with a government in the region to ensure the sustainable supply of strategic minerals. But again, most of these minerals are in fact being illegally mined in the Eastern DRC. So for him, he linked how the EU play a major role in the global supply chain regarding the minerals that has been illegally mined in the Eastern DRC. So again, is how the neo-colonialism does have a link with the supply chain and also the link with what is happening in the Eastern DRC currently. And again, they always supply this kind of mineral, obvious, by also in the same time supporting armed groups who are illegally, mining this kind of mineral in the Eastern DRC. So at least now we do have a big idea regarding the sources of the ongoing conflict in the DRC. So by having an understanding about the causes of the conflict in the eastern part of the DRC, we can now come with a strategy on how we can resolve the issue of the population, especially in the eastern part of the DRC, the issue that the population is having there. And again, as you can see, most of those causes, those sources are from the history of the DRC that, it based on the colonization, and especially as I explained earlier on, the Leopold II, and again, we had the issue with the Belgium, the country itself, And now we are having the issue with the neocolonialism that is also taking, contributing in the conflicts that are taking place in the eastern part of the DRC. So what we have to understand here is that the concept of a decolonial approach to peace needs to address the colonial legacies that are still present in Africa. So that way we have to start. And by focusing on the ongoing conflicts in the Eastern DRC, it is more important for us to focus on meeting fundamental human needs. And this especially is one of the major responsibilities of the Congolese government. And again, as explained earlier on, the Congolese government must focus on the personal development, security, recognition, as well as the identity of all the populations or ethnic groups that form, the DRC. And again, here, I would just want to focus more on the recognition and the identity because, as I explained earlier on, these are the major causes, regarding the conflict that we're having in the Eastern DRC. And we can bring African approach, a decolonial approach that is well known, especially in the Eastern DRC. Here we do have what we call the Baraza approach. So when it comes to the Baraza approach, is a community-led approach that is rooted in traditional wisdom and conflict resolution practices. And here it involved community members engaging in dialogue and mediation to address disputes and prevent violence. So the goal of the Baraza is to resolve conflict, prevent violence, and also to create healings among different populations that are living in the Eastern DRC. And the Baraza approach is not something new because our ancestors used to use this kind of approach to resolve the conflict before even the colonial power came to DRC to create that kind of division among different ethnic groups. So this is one of the strategies or the approach that we can use, especially when it comes to the issue that we're having about the recognition and the identity, especially of the Tutsi ethnic group. So it's something that we must run away from it because we have to understand that this is one of the main causes of the issues or the conflicts that we are having in the Eastern DRC, and we must bring in a African approach to resolve this kind of conflict. And again, as I said earlier on, this is part of the Congolese government because the Congolese government must be responsible to take this kind of responsibilities to resolve the issue that we are having in the Eastern DRC. Secondly, we will look at also to support and implement a decolonial approach to conflict resolution. The DRC represent a significant departure from the dominant Eurocentric peace-building strategies, which frequently overlook the main causes or the root causes of this conflict. And the Eurocentric peace-building strategies, they don't really look at the legacy of colonialism. They always come with top-down interventions, and this kind of top-down interventions, they don't really work in the African, approach or the way the conflict or to resolve the root cause of the conflict. And this is something that's happening in the DRC because since the conflicts in the DRC, I think many strategies has been used, Eurocentric peace building strategies, but at the end of the day, these kind of strategies don't resolve the issue of conflicts in the DRC. So, for example, we do have what we call currently, since 1997 or 1998, the MONUSCO that is in the DRC. That is a United Nations peace mission in the DRC with a budget of over $1 billion per year. But that force, since it's in the DRC, failed to resolve the issue of the conflict that we are having in the DRC. So that shows how the Eurocentric strategies that has been applied in the DRC to resolve the issues or the conflicts in the DRC is not working. That's why we need to come with a different approach that can be able to resolve the issue of conflicts that we are having in Congo. So the African Union tried to come with initiatives to resolve the conflict in the Eastern DRC, and they came with innovative strategies. But again, the effect of neocolonialism have made a block to the African Union ability to especially implement a decolonial approach to the peace building. So we had different strategies, especially the Luanda Protocol. Now we have the SADC that is the EAC that is the, but different strategy. But again, we still having the issue with the neocolonialism, because again, here we do have many countries within the EU are still influenced by their former colonizers, and this situation, put a block on their capacity to support and implement a decolonial approach to peace in the DRC. And the example that can be used here is about what is happening in the region. We do have the presence of two competing regional blocks. So the first one is the SADC, and we do have again also the EAC, also the Eastern African Community. So both of them, they're in the DRC to try to bring solution in the conflict. But at the end of the day, what came out from their strategies, so both blocks tend to prioritize the interests of their Western nations that operate in the region, often overlooking the need of the Congolese people. And lastly, so like a few months ago, the conflict that one of the countries in the region had with another country in the SADC, some soldiers who have been involved in peacekeeping in the region from the SADC have been killed in the DRC. Some soldiers from another country in the DRC have been killed there. So there's that kind of conflict, because you will see, according to some information, the ESC is more closer to the EU, and the SADC region is more closer to the to China or something like that. So that creates an issue, and that's why we're still struggling to have a decolonial approach in the conflict resolution in the DRC. So what we have to understand is that for an African initiative to be effective and truly transformative, they must be aligned with a peace strategy supporting African nation decolonization. So if we don't really think about decolonization, how can we come together to resolve the issue, especially the conflict in the DRC? We must think about a strategy that will be an African strategy, but it will not only be an African strategy that will keep protecting the interests of the imperialist forces, but again, it must be focusing on the issue, the root causes of the conflict in the DRC, and those root causes must be linked to the colonization. Those kind of issues that we got from colonization must be resolved to resolve the issue of conflicts in the DRC. So without this kind of alignment, the concept of African solutions to African problems will continue to be meaningless because many of the challenges faced today are rooted in and perpetuated by imperialistic forces. So for us, African solutions to African problems, again, is a very big issue because when, as African countries, we want to bring some peace initiatives, especially in the DRC, you'll see the money comes from EU or other countries. And basically, by putting that money, they come with imposing their top-down strategies to resolve this issue. So that's a very big issue that we are having in the DRC. So as African, we must work together, resolve the issue of decolonization, especially if we want to have peace in Africa, not only the DRC, because again, African solutions must be applied to African problems in a good way. Uh, George, I think that's what I have for today. Thank you so much again for inviting me. And yes, if there's any questions or inputs, colleagues can contribute. Thank you so much, George.
Um, oh, is Patrick still here? Are we all frozen?
Here, Janet.
No, everything's okay.
Ah, okay. Thank you, Peter.
I think we've lost George.
It's a lot to absorb. I don't see George, though. Let me just jump in, if I may. The picture of millions of people snaking away into the distance, fleeing the conflict, is a portent of what is to come in Western Asia. The Israeli government is going to eject everyone who survives, which may not be that many, into the neighboring countries. And the presentation that you have given is comprehensive and does penetrate to the actual roots, not just false roots that are convenient to the perpetrators. So we can expect a terrible expansion of this kind of generations of horrible violence. And the if is what everyone wonders. I'll stop there.
Does this silence mean it's my turn? Or Peter is still speaking? Oh, I have no sound.
Uh-oh.
I'm done. I think you should go ahead. Everyone
Okay.
just jump in.
want to ask, because we hear this all the time, do it the African way, or use an African solution, or make this characteristically African. What is an African solution? What are the qualities of a solution that define it as African as opposed to international or American or British or Chinese or German or what? And I keep asking my colleagues this here in Nairobi, and so far they haven't been able to answer. What is it that defines something as African?
Is Patrick, are you here?
Yes, I am, Janet.
Okay, do you want to respond to that question from Donna?
Yes, I can respond to Dinah's question.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Goody.
Dinah, thank you so much for this question. It's such a very wonderful question because, people always ask, what is an African solution? It does mean that we have to throw away, you know, any solution that comes from the global north. So for me, that is not the way that we have to deal with an African solution. I think an African solution must be a solution that, first of all, will be looking at the interests of African countries, and that can be done by different countries, even from Europe, from other parts of the world. But again, it must be for the interest of the African people. And as I said earlier on, in the case of my presentation, one of the African solutions is to resolve the issues related to the colonial legacy that created poverty in the country, that created division in the country, and that continue up until now create chaos in the region by the route of neo-colonization. So we do have other global north countries who are supporting an African solution in the country, in the DRC. And as I said early on, it must be something that should be for the interest of the DRC or African countries.
Okay, then please tell me why you're using the word baraza. That's an
Okay,
Arabic word. And
sorry?
is there an African word for baraza?
Yes, Baraza is a Swahili name.
That's an Arabic word. Swahili got it from Arabic. Where is the African word? Bantu,
And
Nilotic, Sudanic,
mm,
I don't care what. Hoi hoi.
and that's the beauty of things, because we can borrow things from everywhere. Especially the baraza is like something we sit together and talk about that issue. So that word can be borrowed from everywhere, any place in the world. But again, if you're gonna bring some addition on to resolve the issues, is something
Excellent.
that we can also use in our for our own
But
advantage
does
as
that
well.
make it African?
Definitely,
Then it's,
because it's part of Swahili now, and it's part of Africa now.
if you Google me, you'll get a bunch of publications, one of which is entitled Enzymes, Ants, and I don't know what else. And it talks
Mm,
about indigenization. And
mm.
the example I give in that article is the chapati. That when
Uh-huh.
An African friend went to a dinner party in Ohio or someplace, and he was told to bring an African dish, he brought
Uh,
chapatis. And all the Wahindi and Pakistanis at that party
mm.
said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" And so we have to think. And so I said in my article, when does something exotic become indigenous? The word baraza is from Arabic, but that doesn't mean it can't be Africanized or
Definitely,
redefined.
definitely.
Yeah, okay.
Mm,
So we have to be aware of that. Janet,
definitely.
I'm sorry I'm holding you up.
No, that was great.
Okay, I'll keep quiet now.
No, 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 no. I want to build on your question. I don't know. I'm taking the turn. And because I want to suggest human as
Yes,
opposed to what are human needs and the needs of human communities. Then we transcend the interests of continents, cultures, particular ones dominating, and particularly of states. So, Patrick, for you, my question is, I think we could add the concept of sustained conflict. How does the Congolese government, I'm assuming, how does the Congolese government benefit from having these ongoing conflicts? Where does the money go? What restrains the Congolese government or the DRC or whatever from engaging in human-to-human relations? Now, I say this with a bit of irony as we watch the United States strangled into, strangling our current government, strangling off all human-to-human supporting agencies. So I think what you're talking about is a global issue for human communities all over. And I think you were incredibly erudite and clear, and you explained so much, and I'm very, very, very grateful for your presentation. Thank you. So that's my question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Janet, for the question. Again, talking about the Congolese government, at the end of the day, like as I said, the Congolese government does have the first responsibility to resolve the issue that we are having in the DRC. Yes, we do have that kind of legacy that we got from colonization, but now what are we doing to resolve those issues? And that's where the Congolese government is failing, in the sense that we do have a lot of issues when it comes to corruptions. Maybe the money that can have been used to try to combat poverty, some people are stealing that money and use it for themselves. And that's the issue that we are currently having in the DRC, and not only in the DRC, but in many African countries. Yes, we do have those issues that came from the colonization, but at the end of the day, what are we doing to resolve those issues? And again, this kind of conflict always come where they find a weak government. If a government is very weak, they always take advantage of that and come and create conflict. That's why, as I said, the Congolese government has the major responsibility to resolve the issue that you are having in the DRC.
Okay, I'd like to just follow up because I think you did explain even my question very well. When you talked about the sort of the illicit and illegal and use of extraction and armed groups by not only various interests like the EU, the US, the China, but also multinational corporations, transnational corporations. It seems like we need some way to this web where things get hidden and trails get lost and obfuscated. You explained it, and so I'm just asking for a little more of what you already teased us with in a very profound way.
Definitely, Janet.
Okay. Can I pose a question, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
Please.
Thank you so much, Janet.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm quite impressed with the presentation, and thank you, Professor. I don't know, it's Professor, Doctor. Thank you for your presentation. But I seem to be also attracted to Odopido's suggestion that I think at this time it is quite problematic, or it's also questioning to be saying that in some cases in Africa, we need an African solution. I think, yes, in Africa, we need African solutions, but it's not to all problems in African context that we need African problems, what my view is, because otherwise maybe we'll be tempted to ask, what is an African problem? Is it possible to bring an African problem to contexts where the problems themselves, I mean, is it feasible to bring an African solution to places or contexts where the problems are not only African? Because it seems to me that in Congo, the problem is not solely African. It is a global problem. It is a problem, we find it in most places. If we see, for example, in this country which is in war with Russia, it is Ukraine, in the other places. We see there Mozambique, even South Africa, there are the same problems of mineral resources. And so can we talk of an African problem to a problem of mining, to a problem of petroleum, of gas, of resources? It is, for me, a little bit difficult. I think it would be feasible to talk about African problems when we are talking about cultural identity, tradition, and dignity issues, maybe in that sense. But in a context of Congo, it is, for me, questionable if we really need an African solution. Otherwise, I will make the same question Dr. Pido made. What kind of solution? Can you give us an example? What kind of solution for Congo? So I think that we have also to transcend some of our ways of seeing, because some of the solutions that we are bringing, they seem themselves to be also following a colonial paradigm. Today, we are in a globalized world where problems are global and the solutions are global, and it's quite problematic to talk about an African problem to a context like Congo. So I would like to suggest maybe if we can rethink the problem itself so that we can also rethink the solutions themselves. What kind of problem do we have in Congo? Is it cultural? Is it of dignity? Is it of identity? Is it of tradition? What kind of problem which requires what kind of solution which is solely African? If it is about decolonization, I think this discourse, it has to expire too. From what I see from other contexts in the world, I think the thing of decolonization, it is a problem of few now. Like maybe some French colonial or post-colonial, some French post-colonies, they could still talk about colonialism today. But countries like my country, Mozambique, we are now this year going to celebrate 15 years of independence. Despite having been 500 years in colonization, I think it doesn't make sense today to talk of colonial discourse. It is our own responsibility now to change discourse. I think some of these colonial discourses, I think they are expired and we have to change them. So I would like to align my point of view with Dr. Pido. What kind of problem is it there in Congo that requires a kind of African solution, which is which? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Jaiko, for your question. I think yes, today we cannot separate issues that's happening in the world due to globalization. So definitely the issue in the Congo does have an impact on forces from that are native in African countries do influence the conflict in the Congo. So talking about African solution again here, why I came with this idea, because remember in my presentation, this issue of conflict in the Congo didn't start yesterday. And since the different wars in Congo, we went through a lot of, solutions, especially as I explained in my presentation. It was like a top-down approach. And that kind of top-down approach didn't really look at the main causes of the conflict in the Congo. Yes, we must come with a decolonial perspective in the sense that we need first to resolve the issue of colonialism. That is the main big issue that we are having in the DRC. And especially, as explained, the colonizer, they came with that kind of strategy to divide the Congolese people so that they can be able to control everybody there. I explained the issue of identity today. The Congo does have that kind of issue of identity. So we can't say that we are all Congolese people, but we are stopping other people to take part or being part of the country. Automatically, that's going to create frustration, and the people from outside will use that kind of weakness to come and create conflict. Because let me explain you about the conflict of the Congo. They always say, and we know is something that comes from outside, but they always say it is a Congolese problem. Why is it a Congolese problem? Because Congolese, they are fighting among themselves about that kind of recognition, for example. So as Congolese, if first we come together and say, let's just resolve that issue of division that came from colonial legacy, let's be one person and try to resolve that issue. I think that will be the start or the beginning of resolving our own issues as African. Again, at the end of the day, due to globalization, we can't say that we'll focus as African people to resolve our issues without also having, intervention from outside. You see, so that's the main issues. Again, as I explained, different influence. We do have two blocks in the DRC now. We do have the SADC and the EAC. So those two blocks, both of them, they are, protecting the interests of their masters. That's why you saw the conflict that happened. And beside that, during the Second War in the Congo, you saw in the city of Kisangani, two, like Rwanda and Kampala, they were fighting in that city as African countries using their own soldiers. African people died, but they were there to protect the interest from outside companies. So as I said earlier on, we need to resolve the issue in the house, and then after that, we'll think to bring intervention from outside as well to try to assist us with the conflict. And I'm very happy because you said you are from Mozambique, the north of Mozambique. The issue that's happening there is also about the control of the mineral there. Bringing outside, military forces to come to control is not about helping or controlling the population there, but at the end of the day, they are protecting the petrol that is there. It's not about Mozambican people. It's about the interests of those multinational companies. I don't know
so much. Thank you so much, Patrick, for that response.
Dr. George, sorry if I can just insist. I agree to most of the answers you have given, and thank you for that clarification. But I will still insist in some. In some moments, you took us to reflect on Congo being part of two economical blocks, SADC and Eastern Africa. But see that in both of them, none of the blocks seems to be so much efficient in bringing solutions. So do all these blocks have problems in finding African solutions? Or what can we say? Why are there failures? Two blocks involved. There could be different perspectives on bringing about African solutions. So don't you think that these failures of our leaders, African leaders' failures, it's due to our own ineffectiveness, if I may say that? I think Africans, we have most Africans, not all, we have proved to be, in most cases, ineffective. Just to see the way our own country has gone through a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of corruption and things that we cannot talk of Western countries, Asian countries, some of them. And yeah, so will we still blame colonization? In what sense? Maybe we need some kind of clarification in that point. In which point is colonization to be blamed? Or it's just, it's a lack of knowledge, lack of wisdom to bring about solutions that we need into problems that we see, and we live with them. Our own leaders know them. That's why they move around with so much guns and soldiers around them to protect them. Don't we know the solutions to the problems we have?
And that is the issue that we are having with neo-colonialism now. So they are coming back, but in a different way, using our own people to create chaos in the continent. So it's not like the way it has been done 100 years ago, but now they are coming in using a different strategy, bringing African countries to start fighting or creating chaos themselves in the continent. But again, we have to deal with the neocolonialism because that is what is happening now, and that is having a negative impact to find solution in the conflict that you are having in Africa, and especially in the DRC.
Excellent. Let's now take 3 questions or comments. We start with Ms. Su and Richard. Ms. Su, please, could you go for it?
Thank you, Dr. George. My question is for Janet, as she said that, what do you mean by saying African solutions for the African problems? Is that, in my idea, when we are talking about this thing regarding the conflict, we are, in my opinion, we are saying that we have to use indigenous knowledge system and leadership rooted in the African context. As Ilsu is saying about, in Africa, we have first we have to identify the root cause of the conflict. Why so many conflicts that we have in Africa still are not solved? In 54 countries, I think more than 30 of the African countries are still in conflict. Who brings the conflict in Africa? Is it outside or is it created by the population? And, in my understanding, Africa is not an island. We have to cooperate with the world regarding to the earthquake, the climate change, the flooding, drought, everything. So when we are saying about the African solution for the African problems, we mean that the conflict that we have in Africa, most of them are created by ourselves and related to power, maybe a natural resources, interest, and like that. Thank you. This is my answer. Thank you very much.
George, unmute yourself, please.
Sorry about that. Dasu, please, could you go ahead?
Okay, thank you, George, and thank you very much, Patrick, for your brilliant presentation. I'll start with my own view very briefly, and then I'll ask Patrick 2 questions. Let me start with my own view. The way I've listened to the presentation, and I've also gone through a number of literature, it's true that the conflict in the DRC is really a complex one. It's an intractable one. I don't think it's really a simple problem that the way sometimes we hear people talking about. And that means I also don't agree with this notion of African solution to DRC crisis. And I've heard the first participant who asked about what are the characteristics of an African solution. I didn't hear even one characteristic. So I don't believe the African solution would bring any meaningful solution to this conflict, in the sense that, as we have seen, there are multiple players in this conflict, the external players and the internal players. So if you want to bring a solution, a very pragmatic one, I would argue that both parties should be involved, all parties should be involved. Because if we take African position and say, okay, let's talk and agree to this, but the external players will cause insecurity and will go back to square one. So personally, I'm sorry, I'm an African, but I don't understand that notion of African solution, especially in the DRC crisis. That's my view. And let me go to the questions now. Patrick, you talked about Baraza approach, where people should sit down, talk, discuss. So let me be very pragmatic. How can we implement the Baraza approach in the DRC, for example, when the two parties, for example, are intransigent? That means they are not willing to back off. They are sticking tenacious to their position. I mean, like this: the DRC regime has not recognized the people from Rwanda, the Tutsis. They say these are not bona fide citizens of the DRC. So it has been, that's a tradition. Even the Tshisekedi government is not willing to accept that notion. So tell me, I would like him to explain to me, how can the Baraza approach work under this situation where people are not even willing to talk? That's one. And the second question about the external players. Since there are multiple players in this conflict, I would think it might sound as a very ludicrous solution, but I think because there are so many powers involved in the exploitation of resources in the DRC, and that's the key cause of the problem, I think, the conflict. I would like to hear from Patrick. Don't you think maybe it will be a very practical solution if the DRC regime or government or the ruling cabal in the DRC enters in a commercial agreement with the US government, and so that the US government can exploit the mineral resources in the DRC and exclude other powers, so that we can bring security in the region? That's there, George.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
Then Richard, and then you can respond to those before we go to Ben.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Always, I'm glad that we have the crude nature of what is it? Peace building, and then its refinery gets us through. I just want to say that issues with government is what is putting us aback. We need to note that the entity, let's say the president, is only one person, and whatever agreement he goes with, it is his mistake if it works well. If it does not work well, but if it works well, it is his good, what is it, governance. So I think in dealing with this, we need to maybe assess the personalities involved, rather than generalizing its government, or maybe the US government, the UK or whatnot. Before we can get the actual, what is it, way of what bringing peace to where conflict is prevalent. And then two, I think whatever we discuss over here, we need to go over, assess it, and refine it. Maybe it's maybe accepted by those who are directly involved in those professionals involved in peace, what is it, making, and then we can be put somewhere. Let's see, we are doing well. So this is a little, what is it, support I would want to come in with. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Patrick, please respond to those.
Okay, thank you so much, Richard. Okay, I think for Richard, it was only an input or inputs that he contributed to my presentation. But I'll go straight to Dasu. Yes, Dasu asked two questions. The first one, it was about the Baraza. And I think when it comes to the Baraza, everything, it just need commitment from the local population, you know. And we do have some studies that has been conducted, and those studies show that in some places, the notion of Baraza, the approach of Baraza, managed to resolve conflict, and especially in the Eastern DRC. So from my side, I know if we have that kind of willing, we can bring this kind of approaches to resolve conflict in the Eastern DRC, because you do have the example of the Gachacha in Rwanda, for example. At a certain point, the Gachacha does work in Rwanda and contributed, to bring peace and reconciliation. Okay, so that can be also applied to the Baraza. So when it comes to peace, impossible is that we have to come together and we have that kind of willing to resolve that issue when it comes to local population. Because at the end of the day, if all of us we live in peace, it will be for our own advantage. And that's why the Baraza, I know for sure it can work, but we need to be involved in that approach and also to try to resolve the conflict without, other thoughts that say that no, maybe they want to take advantage or this and this and this. But I know for sure there are some research that has been conducted that prove that the Baraza does work to resolve issue. Coming to the second question, Dasu, talking about the US government agreement. And I think that the thing that is on the table now. I think the United States of America now is into the problem in the DRC. But again, from our experience, the DRC experience, I think we must not all the time count a lot from outside to bring peace in the DRC without us as Congolese people involved ourselves to work together to resolve that peace. Because peace cannot come from outside. And remember now, the United States government is coming in the DRC, want to make a new contract to do the exploitation of the mineral. But again, it may bring solution. At the same time, it may bring more conflict. And I'm scared we may go back to the same situation during the Cold War. Remember that most of the companies, the contract, the mineral contract that you are having in the DRC, those contracts are for Chinese, are for China. And I'm scared maybe the DRC can be a battleground again between China and the United States of America. So that's a big issue. And I think the Congolese government must, or the Congolese themselves, must use wisdom to bring this contract in the Congo, to avoid, to be back in the situation during the Cold War between the United States and the former Soviet Union. But again, now it's not about that. Country is now between the United States of America and China. And on the news how the conflict that they are having already regarding the tax or those kind of stuff. So I'm scared the DRC may be also again a victim with the USA contract that are coming in the DRC. Again, we must be very wise to resolve this issue and how we can deal with those contracts. Thank you so much, Dasso.
Yeah, thank you. There was this broad question, who is behind the conflicts in Africa? But we may respond to that after Ben and Jim and Peter. So let's start with Ben, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Murhula.
Yes, Ben.
Yeah, thank you very much, because you have said a lot, and it's really something everybody understood very well. I will start by responding to Ado. I don't know if it's your name. I don't know. Your name, which is appearing on the screen, is Odo Chico. You reacted about Barza. Barza, it sounds to me that the languages are more intelligent than humans, because languages can easily borrow from each other what humans don't do. In our African languages, our African context, if a woman comes to borrow in the village the salt twice, it will be a problem. But languages borrow all the time, and no problem. Barza is maybe an Arabic term, but already borrowed by Swahili. The Swahili is made of Arabic and African languages. So that was something I want to respond to you. In French, for example, French and English are borrowing all the time. In French, you find the term like weekend, and there is no problem with that. Now, to come back to Dr. Murhula, African solutions to African problems, I think it's huge, and it's also controversial. It's controversial, as we have heard. Many people don't agree with that. But to be honest, African solution like Gachacha. You know, Gachacha in Rwanda worked. Gachacha worked in Rwanda because it was a national problem. In a context like DRC, I tell you, it's not easy. It's not easy when everybody wants the minerals you have. When I spoke to in February about the same issue here, Dr. George, thank you for inviting me at that time. It was the time when Bukavu and Goma, where we have our family members, were invaded. And as parents and grandparents here, we could sleep, although we are in a relatively safe space called the UK. But I told on that day that it's not easy to have, sorry, I gave an illustration that Congo is like a woman who, that is something you find in my book, Unarmed Heroes. So not unarmed heroes, sorry, the first African World War. At the first page is that statement that Africa is like a man in the village. I like illustration. Who is in trouble just because He's married to the most beautiful lady of the village. The chief, the business people, all want to marry this woman. So to marry the woman, you have to kill the man. So in this illustration, the woman is the box of minerals. We in the Congo, we never know why God put all these minerals the world needs in the 21st century in the Congo. At the point that instead of being a blessing, it has become a curse. Really, it's a curse. You mentioned that theory, the curse theory. A weak government, somebody said this. Another curse in the Congo is to have a weak government. And all that is the result of well-organized colonial masters who want to do all they can to put a weak man to lead this country and then force them to look after their interests. That is happening up to today. Somebody like the new president, we know how he got there. It's because they were behind people who put him there so that he can do what he's doing to protect the interest of not only what you, Dr. Murhula, you call the satellites nation, which are just the neighbors, to do the job for them. In the meantime, they are using what we call on our TV system, the remote control from Brussels, from Washington, from London, from Paris, to control all that from far, through that these satellite. That is wrong. That is wrong. I don't know who will come to tell to the global community that way of working is wrong, because people are dying. You didn't mention, Dr. Murhula, people, because the key point are the people, 10 million plus who have died. And on that day in February, when the two big cities in the east were invaded by Rwanda, and Rwanda baked the rebellion. 10 million in one side, 5 million in a few days. All that, is it not enough? Honestly, you didn't mention that. That is what I'm blaming you for. Sorry for that. I agree with what you said, but I think I have to finish by saying, for DRC, we need not only local situation like Gachacha will not work because the situation is so huge. We need global approach. We need global approach. The solution has to be both local and global. I don't know what you said about this. And also we need the decision to be taken, yes, but the implementation to follow. For example, let me give that, I'll finish by that. EU signed a contract. EU is a group of countries, 27. They signed a contract to get minerals from Rwanda, knowing that Rwanda doesn't have minerals. Knowing that the mineral Rwanda is selling is coming from Congo. They may have a small quantity because they went to show to journalists what they have, but it's not enough for the world market as they are providing today. So when I'm talking about implementation is EU who realize that they have made mistakes more recently because the MPs were forcing them to destroy that contract, but implementation has never been done.
Thank you so much, Ben. Let's go to Jim. and Donna, then we'll end with Peter. So Jim, please. Jim, if you can unmute. Oh, let's go to Donna now. Please unmute, Donna. Could you unmute your microphone, please, Donna?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I wanted to make two comments, but I keep forgetting what they are. You know, I have a resident pure African here. He's totally Black, born in Africa. I asked him, what is the word for baraza in Acholi, which is, it's baraza, but that's an Arabic word. So I know just from talking to people that East African communities have a long history of using the baraza as a tool for settling disputes. But he doesn't have a name in his language, which is Acholi, that means baraza. And I'm going to ask us, I know this happened with some other concept a couple of years ago. Can everybody tell us what the word for baraza is in their Bantu, Sudanic, Nilotic, Khoi, or whatever languages they can come up with, so that we can get the true African word for baraza. The second thing I wanted to say is a very nasty comment, and I'm going to make it anyway. I keep observing that African people, and in this meeting as well, don't want to take responsibility for the bad things. They want responsibility for a nebulous, undefined, unimplemented good thing that's African, but they don't want to take responsibility for fighting with each other over nothing. Okay, that's all. You can throw stones at me. Go ahead.
Oh, we are not going to throw stones. Thank you so much. And yeah, now, now, Jim, I don't know whether you can talk now. We wanted to close, but Milton, we can't resist your hand. Milton, and then Peter will be the last. Milton.
Yes, thank you, colleagues. I'm so sorry I joined late. This was riveting, brilliant questions as well. I just wanted to maybe give a little comfort to the previous speaker and just add a little salt to the salt by saying I think we also need to question as Africans what Ubuntu really means in the context of perhaps all these conflicts over resources, all these failures in governance, all these very, very dire things that we have responsibility for that aren't going forward. Of course, we want reparations. Of course, colonialism happened. Of course, all of these things are bad, and multilateralism and all of that. But as I said, my comment is specifically on Ubuntu as a philosophy. Where does it come in if we have these, as she just said, resources over nothing? I think it's a question we at least need to answer. Maybe you want to answer it on our own without others, but we still need to answer it. Thanks a lot to everyone and the presenter. It was brilliant.
Yeah, thank you so much indeed. Peter, please. And then we'll ask our speaker to, share with us his last thoughts for today.
Well,
Peter,
thank you.
please.
I have sent a message to ask Jim to unmute, and if he does, let's let him go. Jim, are you with us? Please interrupt me. I wanted to say, which I put in the chat, the U.S. is fully colonized by the minerals interests. What goes around has come around. The root issue is about who can say who is human and who is less than human, who's in and who is out. That is colonialism. The indigenous view holds that every living and non-living being is in. We are all related. Until we deal with that colonial worldview, we are doomed as a planet. Jim, are you there? Can you wrap up for us? You're a little fuzzy, but then I heard somebody say that in a bar once. You must be drunk because you're getting very fuzzy looking.
What, dear?
Oh,
Yeah.
Jim, you could type in the chat if you can hear us. That's a thought.
Right. And since also we don't have much time left, Patrick, if you hear us,
Yes,
please.
George. Yes, thank you so much, George. I think I'll start by responding or just also put my comment on the Melton regarding the concept of Ubuntu. I think the main issue that we are having in Africa, um, even the main cause or one of the main causes of the conflicts that we are having among us African is because we don't really apply that principle of Ubuntu. Because Ubuntu itself is about the humanity to others, and because we are. And if we can apply the Ubuntu approach in our countries, I think Africa can be one of the best continents. And sometimes I don't understand, especially going back to the case of the DRC, where some people steal hundred millions of dollars, and that money is supposed to be used, for example, maybe to build hospitals, to build schools, and that can reduce the issue of poverty, all those kind of stuff. But the lack of that Ubuntu, the humanity to others, push them not even to care, because they don't really care about the other people. And automatically that's are the main causes, or trying to be in alliance with other external forces to come to rob the minerals, the African minerals. So those are the issues that we are having, especially with the African leadership. And that goes back to the comment of Donna when she said that we don't take responsibility as Africans. Definitely, we do have our part of responsibility in what is happening in the continent. So again, using the notion of Ubuntu, I think it can be very helpful if we want to resolve the issues in our continent. Going back to Ben, I think I fully agree with Ben, especially bringing in weak government, especially in the DRC. Yeah, because they know that those weak governments, they can be manipulated, and from there they can use those kind of opportunity to steal the mineral in Congo. And you can remember since 1960, the DRC up until now, I can say that we don't have a strong government. And you'll see that they always support those governments. The example can be Mobutu being in power for more than 30 years. But before that, he has been supported with Western countries, even if they knew that he was destroying the country. But again, it wasn't for the interest of the Congolese people. It was for their own interest. So they can put someone who's there, they can manipulate him easily so that they can gain things from the Congo. George, I think also your question, it was who is behind the conflict in Africa? Wow, that's a very good question, George. Yeah, because again, Africa is not even Africa. The world currently is controlled by big companies. Those are the people who are detecting that what is happening, because those are the companies also who are influencing some Western countries' government to go and do exploit illegal minerals in the continent in Africa. So the conflict beyond beyond the conflict in Africa, first of all, the root causes of the conflict of Africa is not caused by African people. That is the fact. But again, at the end of the day, we do have our own responsibility as African people to try to deal with those conflicts in a proper way, as is the African people who are most suffering regarding those conflicts. But again, African conflicts come from outside, colonial legacies. Again, we do have on responsibilities to try to deal with those conflicts. Yes, I think that's all. Yes, I think I responded to all the questions. Janet, please unmute yourself.
I'm just wondering if George is still here to close the meeting. Thank you for your wonderful, really wonderful presentation. I just want to make the distinction between, a presentation, we try to make it coherent. And then we all brought your presentation to life in our discussion. And I want to thank everyone for that. And thank you for this your fine work from your presentation to this closing comment. And thank you for everyone being here. It's so rich to engage and listen with all of you. And until the next time, I think we can say, what language should I use to say goodbye? Until the next time.
Swahili.
Kwaheri, Ben.
Everybody say it in your own language.